All right, welcome again to Systematic Reviews with Margaret Foster, Session 2. This is the March 2017 session. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brian Leaf, my colleague, who will get us started with the session.
Hi, everybody. I am honored to be able to welcome back Margaret Foster for the second installment of our series, the Pieces of Systematic Review with Margaret Foster. We received great feedback last time and great participation on Twitter. So, keep your questions coming, keep your comments coming and thoughts. Feel free to, again, email us or tweet using the hashtag PiecesQA, which we'll go ahead and throw in the chat box again, too. This is the second installment of our series, and actually what we've done, and we'll mention this again, but we've actually decided to have a special Q&A session just a week from now. It will be recorded in case you're not able to make it. We know it's short notice, but we realize that there's so many great questions that it would be great if we could just for an hour have Margaret Foster answer some of the things that she's been able to answer some of the questions that people had for her that we weren't able to get to after the last session. Okay, I'm going to keep the rest of this quick to give Margaret Foster as much time as we can. So just another quick introduction, even though she needs no introduction. She is an associate professor at Texas A&M University and serves as the Systematic Reviews Coordinator at the Medical Science Library, where she also has the joint position at the School of Public Health and the College of Medicine at Texas A&M University's Health Sciences Center. Her work with systematic reviews began more than a decade ago while completing her Master's of Public Health. In her current position, she provides consultations for researchers in a variety of disciplines and has published 25 articles applying or describing systematic review methods and evidence-based practices since 2009. We're really excited, and she might correct this on this, but I believe this is correct. Her book is coming out today, March 9th. Buy it on Amazon. Without further ado, I give you Margaret Foster.
So good morning. Thank you for joining us. On the next slide, you're going to see the sessions that we have coming up. And just a reminder of what we talked about last time, we focused on how to determine if a research question is right for a systematic review. And many of the questions that I saw come up last time were about other types of reviews, like rapid reviews and scoping. And so on June 1st, we're going to have a whole hour session just about all those other types of reviews and where they fit in. Some of the other questions focused more on running a service and running consultations and what do you expect the researcher to bring. And so we can cover all of that during the March 9th session. And then after this session, we're going to also have in April what happens after the search. But for today, we're going to be focusing on, here's my slide, and I forgot about this one. Brian was talking about the book. It actually comes out today. And so I was very excited to be able to write this with Sarah Jewell, and we also had many wonderful writers who took up some of the chapters. I think between Sarah and I, we wrote or co-wrote 7 of the chapters, but we did have some great experts, such as Susan Fowler, write some of the chapters. And so today we're going to be focusing on what searches beyond the typical databases should be done. We're going to be talking about some standards, why we have those standards, publication bias, some of the different resources, the challenges, what needs to be documented, and the all-important question of when do you actually get to stop searching, which is one of my most asked questions, and about updating searches as well. So if you have done a systematic review and when you go to approach your researchers about other types of searches you need to do, how do they feel about this? There is a little emoticon. Right now it's set on a smiley face, but you can change that, a little drop down. So if you want to kind of change that little emoticon and let me know. It's just above the chat box. So I see what looks like maybe a scared face. Let's see. So how do your researchers feel when you say, oh, there's these other searches we need to do, after you've just given them several, after you've finished your database searching? So why? Yes. So some disbelief, some definitely some dragging of feet. Yeah. Doesn't PubMed have everything? I like that one. So definitely we get some kickback on why do we need to do this. Okay. So I'm going to give you some of the research that's out there, and we'll talk about the standards. I also want to say that out of all the talks I'm going to give, this is the one I don't know, nervous is the right word, but definitely I don't feel like a great expert on all of Graylit, because some of it I don't get to do very often because I don't, out of all the reviews that I've done, I haven't got to do that many that focus just on randomized control trials. I tend to do those more public health type. So let's talk about some of the standards and publication bias. So this is what I refer to as MECR. I don't know, maybe there's a better way to say that. And these are the standards from Cochrane that are pretty recently updated. And throughout this, you will see this phrase that I quoted here that says, searches for studies should be as extensive as possible in order to reduce the risk of publication bias and to identify as much relevant evidence as possible. And so what do they mean by publication bias? Publication bias means that when results are published are systematically different from the unpublished studies. And so there's a situation that's been happening for many, many years and has been documented many times, that when research has resulted in significant results, they're much more likely to be published than when they're not. And this pie chart that I have here is from some research from Song et al. And it showed why do researchers choose not to publish something. So some of them will try and get it published, but it gets rejected because they had no results or not significant. Sometimes the researchers themselves self-select and say, oh, I don't think this will be published and I don't have time to work on something that I don't think will be published. Some feel like, oh, these results weren't important, nobody wants to read them, and then there's a whole other set of reasons. And so this is a problem because we need to know when something isn't working. If we only look at those significant results, but there were actually many more unsignificant, those all need to be taken into consideration. So when we're measuring publication bias, this can actually only be done graphically and mathematically in this way when a meta-analysis is done. It cannot be done without that. And so it's done using funnel plots. And what you're looking for is a balanced picture, such as the graph here shown on the left side. And then on the right side here, we see some that are unbalanced due to different reasons. But whenever you see one that's unbalanced, that means there is some kind of an issue. So how does this work? So what can happen? There are lots of different ways that we can consider this bias. One of those biases is called truncation bias. And this is when a study is published in a much briefer form. So we only see it as a conference paper or a poster instead of a full-blown journal article where we get all of the information. Sometimes researchers feel like, oh, this probably isn't going to get published, so they don't really try to get it published right away. And then later on they may have time, and so then they end up getting it published, but it took a while for that to happen. It's also much more likely that these articles are not published in English, but maybe within a researcher's a smaller journal that's more local to them. They try to get it in there. There's also database biases, where some databases are more likely to index certain languages or journals, and so this is a wide variety. And this book, Publication and Meta-Analysis, is actually a pretty long book. This is just one chapter within that that's just publication bias and highlights the issues within some different disciplines and how they do that. So there's publication bias. So what are the standards? So these are some of the standards that I pulled out of the MECOR list that focus on what to do after you've done those main searches. And I highlighted in red those that are mandatory, and then in blue those that are labeled as highly desirable. So one of the standards says that if needed, you should search for some different types of evidence, which we'll talk about in a minute. And we'll go through each of these in more detail. And then there's also searching trials registers if you're looking for trials. The all-important gray lit, and what somebody correctly said that there'll be a webinar on March the 22nd from MLA on that. Searching within other reviews and reference lists, and then finally contacting individuals. So let's look at each of these. So searching for different types of evidence when necessary is considered mandatory. And this is especially important when you are looking at adverse effects, economic types of reports, or qualitative research. And this is where you're going to perhaps looking for different research types outside of randomized control trials. Because remember, that's many of Cochrane's goals is to find randomized control trials. Many of the reviews that I have worked on, I was not limiting to randomized control trials, so I was always looking for these other types. What are some tools out there that can help with this? One of my favorite tools is the ISSG search filter resource. And what they have done is collect search filters across the board on all different types of research. And so, of course, many of these are designed for a very particular database, but they can be really helpful. And I really love this picture of lions and tigers and bears. I've never seen that before, so it was fun. Okay, so trial registers. This is the one that I don't get to do very often, but Cochrane has called out for researchers to search at least 2 websites. One is the clinicaltrials.gov, and the other is the WHO International Clinical Trials platform. And one of their notes is that although clinicaltrials.gov is included in the WHO list, it's good to search them separately because clinicaltrials.gov, the interface has some different features. And what's nice about MeCore is that it points you back to different sections within the Cochrane Handbook, which is available for free online, and so that you can go and read more about the requirement. So, trial registries, there are many out there, and it is growing, and sometimes they're very specific for a region or sometimes on a topic. I didn't have room on here to add it, but there are also some veterinary clinical trial registries that have started. And this picture is Dr. Ben Goldacre, who has been leading the effort to create a website called All Trials, where the goal is to have all clinical trials be reported. And he was the one of the main speakers at MLA. And one of the things that his work has highlighted is the fact that only half of clinical trials are ever reported. And so sometimes this makes it, of course, really difficult to find them, especially if they're not even registered, which is one of the reasons why it's really important to also look at conferences, which is one way we can see them as well. And so there's also Trials Tracker, which is trying to get a better idea about what's happening even better than this research has done. So they're going to keep studying this issue and keep pushing it forward. So then we come to the gray literature, and this area, oh, there's a question, are these just RCTs? For the most part, most of the trial registries are mostly focusing on randomized controlled trials. There may be other types in there. I hardly ever see any other type being registered. So if I even think there might be something in a registry, a trials registry, I might go and check it out. But I typically don't see that many others. Oh, the other thing I will say about whenever you go and search in any of these, if it's the first time you've gone in there, it's a really good idea to go and look at the help section, because all of these databases are set up a little bit differently, and some are very different from what we would consider like the usual Google search. And there's, I've taken Carol Lefebvre's workshop. It's a 4-hour workshop on how to search trial registries, and I think she's doing it again, this MLA that's going in Seattle. And so if you wanted to learn more about that, it's a great class. So some great questions there. Okay, so the gray literature is also considered mandatory, and gray lit is one of those things that's sometimes hard to define. The specific examples that they list in MeCore are reports, dissertation and theses, and conference abstracts. So those are the ones I'm going to focus on. And then again, you see this quote about looking for all of the relevant research here. So what is gray lit? It's that which is produced by different groups outside of the commercial publishers is one of the best ways to say that. Does anybody know this picture that I put on this slide, if you're a big fan, why I put this one on there? So one of the other terms for gray lit is fugitive. And so as the second I heard that, that term, I always think about Harrison Ford as a fugitive. So I think it's always a fun PowerPoint whenever I can add a picture of him in. I found this table from Adams et al. That tries to define a little bit better this kind of vague term of gray literature. And so they defined gray lit as not controlled by the commercial publishers, and they put reports and working papers and newsletters in there. And then they had a term of gray data, which is user-generated, such as tweets and blogs and all kinds of things there. And then gray information, which were more like meeting notes and emails and personal memories. And so I think sometimes with a few projects I've worked on, we actually did go into some blogs and things because we were looking at policy issues and public opinion. So I have gotten a little bit into gray data, but I haven't gotten ever into the gray information. So what are your feelings about gray lit? What are some of your favorite places to search for it? Especially for reports. So I listed here some types of reports and some places. Yes, I think internal documents would probably be great information. I think that they would fall into there. Guidelines are really important. Yes, I would definitely put guidelines high up on the list. One of my favorite things about guidelines is also looking at their citations, because they were probably doing a pretty big search, hopefully, when they would develop them. So we're seeing some of those advanced types of Google searching coming up, where we're looking at government sites, and oh, I've never seen that before, limiting down to the file type of PDF. I really like that. Yes, I did hear that the New York Academy of Medicine, I think is what NYAM stands for, that they're going to not be updating any longer. I did read about that. Yes, it very much depends on the topic as to what where you should search, and I think that's what makes gray lit so difficult to figure out where should I go, because it's very dependent on your topic. You have to consider what are the important places for that discipline, for that area. Oh, thank you to PH Partners. I always try and highlight PH Partners whenever I can. It stands for Public Health Partners, and it kind of, to me, reminds me a little bit of like Medline Plus, but for public health. It has lots of great links in there, so I always like to go in there and see if there's anything else I can find. One area that I've always struggled with reports is legislation. I'm very lucky that we have a law librarian available to talk, that I have available to talk with, because I've always struggled with where do I go for this type of legislation. But these are all some really great ideas, and I'm looking forward to the talk that's happening on March 22nd on Gray Lit. Yes, so the state level data can be really helpful. I know that I've done a few projects where we were trying to gather information from different states, and that made the search very interesting. So these are all really great ideas. And so now we're going to, I saw a little bit of in the chat box talking about open repositories, and I think these can be really helpful when looking for dissertations. So of course there's the ProQuest dissertation database, but there are lots of other places to search, and not every, and different universities have different rules about where things need to go, and many universities are now coming up with their own repositories. So they can be sometimes difficult. I have tried different things. One thing I've tried is going in and searching WorldCat and limiting to the type or form of thesis dissertation has been helpful. And so that's how I'm trying to consider that hopefully that university's library has tried to index that thesis or dissertation, and I may need to request it through ILL or something like that, instead of just trying to find the full text. And then, of course, there are a few databases that index some dissertations as well, and so I try and consider that as well. So there's lots of great talk going on in here about different resources, and I do hope, I know that we'll be compiling the chat, especially looking for questions, but I also hope that we can compile all these different resources, because I know I will benefit from them as well. Conference abstracts is also an interesting area, because this can be very dependent on your discipline and the one that you're looking for. I know I've worked on several veterinary-related systematic reviews, and we have access to a proceedings database called the Searchable Proceedings of Animal Conferences. I've also been using Northern Light, which we get through Ovid lately, trying to see is that beneficial. I'm still doing some testing on that to see. In the last few reviews, I've used it, and we have found a few things in there that have been really helpful. But then there are also databases that are already including them, although I don't know about how well they cover it. And then there's some general proceedings out there as well. But you may also want to talk with your researcher about which conferences are most important. It's easy to get lost in them. Yes, definitely. So I'm very strategic in how I'm going to do this. And that's how I am throughout this process, is I always try and consider what is our topic and where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck. And so one of the questions I have is, why do we search for conference proceedings? I can't get enough data from that. One of the things that you say is you are using the conference citation to see if a full report was published. So that's a really good point. That is one reason to search conference papers. Sometimes you do get a full conference paper. It's not just an abstract or a poster. And then some groups, especially when we've had a really hard time finding any studies on something, we use the conference abstract as a starting point, and then we write to the authors listing out the additional pieces of information that we would need in order to complete our coding form. And so I haven't done that on too many, but on the ones that I've done, it has made a big difference in the numbers of studies that we could include. And yes, Scopus also includes some conference abstracts as well. So this is C29, and I found this one very interesting because it's very related to the very next item on the checklist. So on this one, they listed searching within other reviews, such as those previous reviews that are on the same topic. And so they labeled this as highly desirable. But then when you look at C30, it says searching in reference lists, which are considered mandatory, and they list search in the reference list of included studies and any relevant systematic reviews. The only thing that I've been able to figure out is maybe they meant not just systematic reviews, but also other narrative reviews and other types of reviews outside of systematic reviews. And I have always found this to be the one step that I never want to skip over. I think out of all of the types, it is the most strategic one that you can do because once they're done compiling their included list, that is a finite set now that I can go through and look up the citations. But of course, you can also get a really big number back from that as well. So let's see. So looking at prior reviews is very helpful, even if they're not systematic. Oh, this is one of your favorites. That's fun. Okay. So, so what are your favorite places or tools to help in gathering these reference lists? So I see some Scopus. Oh, how to prepare the faculty for the volume they're going to get back. That is sometimes difficult. I'll talk a little bit about some of my tricks. Okay, so when I search the reference list, do I send everything or some level of screening? So I do like to do some level of screening, and some of this, I actually do this part for them and only send them a little bit, and some of it I train the researcher on how to do it. I meet with a lot of researchers, so I don't always have time to be the point person for doing this. So, okay, so let's talk about some of the different options. So I created this chart based on a chart that I found in this article that was published just this last year, because I've always been curious about the coverage and I've always felt that Scopus does a better job, and I've read that several times. But this is one that really highlighted that. And the only reason why I had to create my own table was the table they gave. It was very, it was just a lot of gray, and it would have been hard to read on a slide. And so basically what they did is they looked at the academic journals that were listed in ULRICS, and then they divided those into 4 discipline areas: natural science and engineering, biomedical, social sciences, and arts and humanities. And then they looked at the coverage for each of these. Now the graph is only talking about Web of Science and Scopus, not Google Scholar. I just added that as another perhaps citation tracking database. So as you can see here, Scopus covers many more titles than Web of Science. We can see the unique titles for Web of Science is there in the green, the overlap is red, and then Scopus is blue. And so I feel very confident in saying that I'm going to use Scopus first. And then Web of Science is, of course, always my backup if we don't find the article in Scopus. Is this surprising to anyone? Oh, so Google Scholar isn't on this chart. It wasn't part of their research. I just added it as another potential resource for looking for citations. So it's not part of the graph. I'm very fortunate that we have both Web of Science and Scopus. But I think it's important to look at your topic area and which one might work better depending on what you have access to, of course. Okay. So one of the other ways of searching is by contacting individuals and organizations. And this one is labeled as highly desirable. I have found this to be very helpful on some of the reviews that I've worked on. And in fact, one of my recent projects, we had collected 40 studies, and then I asked the researchers what kind of listservs, what organizations did they think we should contact in order to let them know that we were doing this review and collect some more. And so they gave me that list, and we put out our call. And I ended up finding 14 more studies just from that. And we discovered that we were looking for systematic reviews, but so many people were not putting systematic review in the title or anywhere in the abstract. And because we were doing this in education, it wasn't a requirement, it wasn't indexed that way, and so it was really difficult to find. So if you're doing something where you know that you're having a really difficult time finding something because of a term, I think it's a really good idea to do this. Oh, and some people put systematic review in the title, but they aren't. Yeah, that's definitely true. I see that a great deal outside, especially of medicine, although you still see it there. But as I've looked at systematic reviews in other disciplines, it's definitely higher. So has anybody ever contacted researchers? What have been your results from doing that? So. So you suggest that the researcher contact them. And it's been helpful getting the data. Yeah. A couple of times when I did this, actually, it happened twice over the 10 years I've been doing this. I had one student who was very interested in just looking at studies within his own country of Thailand, and we had a really hard time finding things. We were looking at conference reports and posters and everything. And then I suggested to him to contact a few of the Thai professional organizations around his topic. He ended up getting some great responses back, and actually when he graduated, he went to work with one of those faculty members that had contacted him when he went back home, and so he was very excited for that. But years before, I had worked with another student who was an American student, but was very interested in collecting some studies internationally, and he ended up contacting a researcher somewhere in Europe, I want to say Denmark. They ended up talking, and he ended up doing a study abroad program there for a semester. And so while that's, you know, a very small percentage of the time that I've participated in this, I would say that it's very beneficial and can have some outcomes that you really weren't expecting. Oh, I do like the idea of using ResearchGate. I have used ResearchGate a few times, especially when I found a white paper or a reference that we had a really hard time finding. Now I'm starting to try ResearchGate to try and get to the full text. Okay. So great. So some great responses there. Okay. Oh, I forgot about this slide. So this is just a little bit of the ideas for doing this, and I kind of think about it as like a plane flying around, you know, at a sports event. You just want to kind of put it out there and let people know that you're looking for this. I really try and target those groups that are really likely to be publishing on this. And then you may be targeting some specific authors as well. So I do have a question here, and maybe we can get a yes or no kind of response here with the check mark. Are any of the librarians watching this dedicated solely to doing systematic reviews? And so maybe you could do a check mark or an X, depending on your answer to that. That is my sole job. That is all that I focus on. But I know at many universities that would be difficult to do. It's heading that way. So let's see. So I've got one yes and lots of no's. So this is definitely something that has been added into your, maybe added into your job description or that you take on, but it's not your main focus. Yeah. So I think that's another part that makes systematic reviews sometimes a little bit more daunting even, because there's a lot of methods, papers coming out all the time saying, oh, this is a great way to do that, and if you don't have the time to go and look those up, sometimes you may miss out on that. And I know that happens to me even though that's what I'm focusing on, because it's maybe every 6 months that I'm able to go and kind of scan things and see what's going on. So one of the things that we're trying to do with the MLIS SIG, which is the special interest group just focusing on systematic reviews, is we've started a monthly webinar to talk about some issues and to start sharing with each other. And so I found out several things doing that. We're going to be having another one on March the 21st. So let me know if you want to know some more about that. I think it's awesome that I'm full-time on systematic reviews. So I saw one question here. Can you address the problem of fellow librarians who read articles that are very critical of systematic reviews and don't believe in the development of them? So I think with any research method, there are issues, right? So with randomized control trials, there's an issue with, and especially right now, I think there was a call, not a call, there was a story on NPR not too long ago about some research showing that how systematic reviews or meta-analysis could be, the data could be manipulated to support a topic, especially depending on the founder or the funder, sorry. But I think that that's true of any research, and so I think the method itself, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but how it gets applied. And so I think with all research, you have to be critical of it. And so systematic reviews need to be critical of the research that they're doing, and they also need to consider the bias that they're putting into the topic. So it's been very interesting. Sometimes I've had some very almost heated debates about systematic reviews, and but it's a research method in itself, and so we have to take what it has. And if they don't believe in systematic reviews, what is their suggestion? What's the alternative? So, oh, thank you. There's the article from NPR. So I think it's all research. We have to be critical of it, and nothing is perfect. So thank you for that. I think that's an important discussion. So what else to consider besides the things that we saw listed in MECOR? Sometimes there are very specific journal titles that you know are not indexed well. And this is one of those cases where unless you know that topic area really well, you may not be aware of this. I have sometimes had to talk with a librarian that is a specialist in that particular area and just pointedly ask, are there any journal titles you know of that I need to watch out for? And so that happened on a veterinary one that I was working on. I would have had no idea if I didn't have help with that. And then there's also times to look in book chapters, especially in some of the social sciences. They tend to publish in these monograph kind of series, which are not always indexed well. And then I also look at citing articles. So those are articles that cited the included studies that I'm including. And so I put a couple of references on here that are talking about these other search types and what they're including. And so this is a recent, the first one on there is a recent article from Booth that was talking about the importance of book chapters in looking at qualitative and social sciences types of studies. And so you might want to check that out. And then I have another one there from Ogilvy that was looking at health effects of social intervention and how far should you go. Now that's a little bit older article, so you probably want to start with Booth, but I did get some ideas by looking at the second one. So we've talked a little bit about the challenges in doing these. So of course there are always issues. You may not have access to all the resources maybe that you wanted to search or have the time to do it. Especially when it comes to the time issue and considering what the team is willing to do. I will try and pick those that I think are the most important to be done. And I always let them know like what the standards are so they'll know what they're turning down and be aware of it at least. Another big issue is that many of these places that you'll go and search, you can't export into anything. And that was the case with the veterinary conference proceedings one. So what I ended up doing was I printed out a PDF of all the results for the researcher, and then he just wrote a check mark next to what he wanted. And then I was able to just focus on trying to get a few of them instead of trying to do all of them. And we had to manually count what he excluded from there. And so I know that the talk that's coming up on March 22nd, I think she's going to be talking about that in that webinar, the one that's happening for MLA. Documenting the search, it's not incredibly difficult because a lot of these searches are going to be shorter, but it is important still to document. Sometimes I do a print screen if I don't have any other way of gathering what that search was. And then the all-important question of when do you stop? So how does everybody decide when you're going to stop? What are some markers that you have for that? seeing the same results over and over. So that's a really big hint that you're getting close. So, so especially if you're focusing on guidelines. Okay, and so this list of questions comes from this Cooper, Hedges, and Valentine handbook. And so they say a lot of the same things that we've seen that Cochrane is calling for. Looked in all the important reference databases, don't omit non-English or gray lit, contact authors. And then what they have at the end is modifying your search strategy. And so this is one that I just want to spend a couple minutes on because we're running a little bit short on time. It may be that you do all these searches and then they find something that should have been is actually located in one of the databases that you already searched. So I created kind of a diagram here. So the green oval here is the database search that you did, and then the blue oval is the newly found articles. And some of those are overlapping in the database, but not overlapping with the database search. So you've got to figure out, well, why didn't it come up? So I don't know if this is helpful to you or not, but I did include a slide that shows kind of my thinking, what I do to try and figure out what is causing this to question. Oh, sorry. How do you know when you have the right search terms? So on this one, what I've shown is a line search that I did. And so line 1 is concept A, B, and C. I combined all those together and then added limits. And so line 5 is representing my original database search. And then 6 through 9 are the 4 articles that I found from these other searches that were done. And so I combine all those together. And then I test to see, are they in my 600? And so those 4 are not, so that's line 11. And then I start going through each concept to figure out which ones are included in that concept and which ones aren't. And so we get down to this line 14 here, and you'll see that it was not retrieved because it was missing a term from concept B. So this is kind of my way of systematically going through those studies that should be in my search but aren't, and figuring out what terms should I focus on now when I go and look at the individual record. So what am I looking to modify? So I thought I would put that in there. I know we only have a few more minutes. Is this similar to what other people do? Okay, line 10 says, oh, it shouldn't have 10 in it. Sorry about that. It should say just 6 through 9. You're right. I'm going to write that down. Let's see. Yes. So if I find a new term, I'm going to add that one in there and see, now do I get that back? And then when I'm done, then I'm just going to take anything new that comes up with this. So the overall idea is that if I missed these 4 articles, I may have missed others as well. And so this is pretty much my last step to make sure. And you're right, I also do this in the beginning when I'm first building up my search as well. Line 12 also has 12 in it. Oh, you're right, that was supposed to be 10. Boy, I really needed somebody else's eyes on this slide, didn't I? So we only have a few more minutes, so let me end there. It was only a slide. Thank you. So I would definitely get those fixed, and then we'll put out the slides again. So thank you for those suggestions. So we had a lot of great discussion here. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you'll join us on the talking on Twitter, and next week, same time, same channel.
Hey, Margaret.
Oh, yes.
Sarah Miles from the SDR office. Before anyone takes off, please wait just a few more minutes. We have a few last-minute housekeeping. So thank you again, Margaret, for a great session.
Okay, so I'll stop there and let you do what you need to do.